the democratic autonomy project in Turkey. I will concentrate on the experiences in Turkey. First, I will define a crisis in Middle East and in Turkey. The crisis started after the change in the economic, political and social structures of the Middle East countries. There are some symptoms of these changes. Some of them were the implementation of neoliberalism and the reorganization of the forces within sovereign and existing hegemonic blocs. And we can add the emergence of the cleavages of the national identities of which the nation-states of the region grounded upon. During this conjuncture, the nationalism, patriarchy, economic inequalities and ecological crises were reproduced by the old and new dominant elites. The result was the continuation of the exclusion of the national and ethnic identities from the social and political order, reproduce of the economic and social inequalities, and profit-driven and human-centered environmental policies. This is what I defined the crisis. These are the symptoms of the crisis in the Middle East. I use the term crisis. It is not a natural thing, but reproduced by the social and political forces. In this context, the political projects and desires of the groups from the Islamists to the leftists to solve the existing social and political crisis became apparent and influential in the political arenas of the countries of the region. These solutions and political projects were either offered to reconstruct the social and political common, to maintain the existing domination systems, or aim at radical transformation of the societies with new social contracts or political systems. I place the democratic autonomy project within this ground, on this ground, or then within this context, side-by-side political Islamist, liberal and local leftist projects, the components of Kurdish political movement close to PKK also have a project named as Democratic Autonomy, Democratic Confederalism or Democratic Republic. The movement claimed to change the existing social and political systems in the countries where Kurds live. In parallel with these developments, the Kurdish political movement in Turkey also tried to realize a politics to change the country's social and political system in the midst of structural, economic, cultural and political change and passages. With respect to Turkey's local context, Kurdish political movement had a claim to solve the social and political crisis in Turkey, even if it is mostly coded as dangerous and terrorist organization and excluded by the political fields and spaces in Turkey. It continues. Formalized and developed by Abdullah Öcalan, one of the founders and long-time leader of PKK, and adopted by different sections of Kurdish political movement, Democratic Autonomy Project was designed as a radical social and political project constituted by leftist and libertarian ideas. It is mainly manifested to solve the Kurdish problem. Therefore, despite of the change in the political and ideological orientation and outlook of Kurdish political movement, the project was the expression of a new political line to solve the Kurdish problem by Kurdish political movement at the beginning. As it will be explained below, the PKK and political organizations close to it in the Kurdish regions of the Middle East changed their aim from an independent Kurdish state to living together and within the other sections of populations of the countries where Kurds live. Due to this change, the Kurdish political movement extended its political outlook from Kurdish problem through the constitution of a nation state with Marxist-Leninist principles to radical transformation of the societies and political systems of these countries. At this point, it mustn't be understood that Kurdish political movement wasn't aiming at a radical transformation in the Middle East before. On the contrary, as it is known that the PKK and political groups close to it have radical leftist ideals intending the revolutionary and radical transformation of the social and political orders in the world. They were considering them as the part of the global revolutionary struggles. Given this as being a synthesis of the ideas of different thinkers such as Murray Bookchin, Antonio Negri, Michel Hart and Karl Marx and others, the Democratic Autonomy project has been designed to establish a new social and political order. Then I will talk about the details of the Democratic Autonomy project. Okay. Evet. As mentioned before, the PKK and some components of Kurdish political movement close to it started to change its political aims, strategies and means. In related to this, a disposition in Kurdish political movement emerged in the mid-1990s. That was the abandonment of the desire for an independent Kurdish state in 4 countries of the Middle East: Turkey, Iraq, Syria and Persia. Instead, a confederalism designs an autonomy for Kurds in the countries where they live, rather than the independence was supported. This confederalism was to be realized through the change of the constitutional and governmental systems in these countries. Side by side, this new ideological and political orientations of PKK, the legal Kurdish political parties also started to become apparent in the political arena of Turkey. These parties emphasized the peaceful solution to Kurdish problem, reforms for democracy in country, and equal rights for ethnic and national minorities in country in accordance with leftist ideals. Even if these parties concentrated upon Kurdish problem, their party programs and political activities also included the common problems in country, such as economic inequalities, lack of democracy and human rights. Thus, being leftist parties, they acted in parallel to and with the left in Turkey, developing alliances with social democratic, Marxist and libertarian organizations in country. As it is known, the result was the establishment of HDP, the People's Democratic Party. Correspondingly, legal political activities increasingly concentrated upon the daily needs of Kurds. Thanks to these activities, some cultural and social institutions were established. Legal representation of the Kurds in the parliamentary system and local government strength. In this sense, legal components of Kurdish movement try to establish cultural institutions. Also, the organizations for the women liberation and solidarity mechanisms for the poor Kurdish people was developed. In parallel with this, also, as I mentioned, the alliances with leftist and libertarian and anti-authoritarian groups were developed during 2000s and 2010s. Due to the new ideological orientation named as Democratic Autonomy, developed by Öcalan, the practices changed. The practices of Kurdish movement changed. They became very close to the leftist organizations in Turkey. then I should be quick. You can imagine the chains. Yes, the Kurdish political movement named as developed a new strategy, Turkinization. The result was the establishment of HDP in Turkey. They constructed different alliances with ethnic and national groups such as Alevis, Armenian people, and with other leftist groups such as Marxist Social Democrats, and also anarchist supported HDP or HDK. But the Democratic Autonomy project have been limited due to some reasons. I will explain them. First of all, I should mention about the limitations. The project couldn't widen itself into the wide sections of the population. They became limited with the leftist groups. Also, even if they constructed some political and social institutions, they couldn't extend into the wide sections of population except Kurdish people. As you know, after the increasing fascism in Turkey, some of the cultural and political institutions and political organizations of left and Kurdish movement was crushed by the state, was terminated. As you know, some of the local governors were arrested by the Turkish government. Under these situations, the ideals of democratic autonomy can't express itself and can't construct itself. This is about the also the Turkish society. This is a banal idea, but I should express the Turkish society have some habits being nationalist and conservative. This can change, this may change, but under the government of AKP, it is difficult because they reproduce these habits using some power mechanisms, using service politics. You know, these policies were common in all of the underdeveloped countries subjected to neoliberalism and conservatism. Then, all of these are things to think about the radical politics. I try to think on radical and libertarian politics in Turkey because I live there. I want to change the political system. This idea was banned. Also, I want peace, like all of other libertarian and anti-authoritarian people in Turkey. I don't know how to change. Sometimes I think about the force. We don't have force. Kurdish movement has force. They support the weak groups in country because of, under the fascism, they should construct alliances with Kurdish movement because Kurdish movement supports them. I don't know. Then I am finishing. Okay.
Okay. Our next presenter is Maria Cornejo. Maria is from Chile.
Marisa.
Marisa. Sorry. She's from Chile. She's currently based in Geneva. She's a visual artist and a researcher. And today she's going to talk about drawing my dreams from state terrorism in Chile to exercising the revolutionary law of women. A talk with images.
Thank you. Oh, this is on? Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you to TRISE for receiving this paper. And yeah, I will speak more as an artist and giving testimony of the different situations that I live personally. And I'm very grateful to be here, and also very grateful that I had the experience of visiting the first encounter of women who fight against capitalism in the Zapatista encounter last year, 2018. This has inspired this paper. So first thing, whoops, sorry. Yeah, this is, I wanted to start by this. This comes from the colonial theory somehow. Professor Ramon Rosfogel, who works in Berkeley University and has been influential in my work, he did a speech recently, the 4th of September in Chile. I'm from Chile. He was the anniversary of when Salvador Allende took power in 1970. And in that speech he talks about the three big bangs of colonization. The first one was 1992, when America gets invaded, Latin America. The second is 2010, I forgot the number. You can see it in the photos, in the image. And when apparently America becomes independent, but a new set of colonization arrives, the British colonies comes to bring extractionism of mines, and they colonize us in a different way. And then it's 1973 when our democratic president gets killed, and Salvador Allende, and a very strong, more deeper level of neocolonization starts in Chile and spreads to the whole planet. And somehow what I bring here is a bit the history of surviving this and how to survive with different tools. And so I have a testimony of what state terrorism became. I was living in Mexico when the Zapatista struggle started. But I was scared, I must say. I was living in the city and I felt like maybe it's a bit scary going there. It was amazing, I loved it, but I didn't have the courage to go there. But a few years after, my father died, and he was someone who survived. I mean, he was tortured and in prison in Chile, and this is the reason why we have to leave in 1973. And so I have to live with this survivor of violence, who I witnessed how he slowly died of alcoholism, because the state could never take care of him as a victim of the damage. And also we were expelled from Europe in 1980. We didn't find the refugee status in Europe in 1980. So when he died in 2002, I started to have dreams with my father, this is some sort of symptom of this catastrophe, when nothing is left, what can you rescue? And in the first dream I had of my father, when he died of alcoholism, he appears in a bicycle and he's looking healthy, and he's going to Chiapas, right? And this happened in 2002. Well, I didn't have the courage to go to Chiapas until 2018. And then I want to talk a little bit about ecosophy. Ecosophy talks about if you really want to change empires, we need to take into account our subjectivities, our dreams, our soul, our spirit, and then start to act with our traumas, with our vulnerabilities into a social political dimension. Meaning, if I'm a refugee of Chile and I'm sitting with someone from Kurdistan, there is a lot we need to share and work together. And not wait tomorrow or have a specific agenda, but today have a dialogue and within us as well. And then it means also we need ecosophy is also, it was a psychological technique used by Guattari, who they also changed the roles of the institutions. I mean, people that was treating people with different psychological problems, they decided actually the psychiatrists needed to do the cleaning and the cooking and not give those tasks to with the less qualified people. Rotation of activities, rotation of duties. In any kind of healing situation, the experts had to do the work of the non-experts. And ecosophy talks about that, and also letting the people that is in a delusion to use their delusion to do something constructive. If crazy people in a hospital wanted to escape, then they gave them tasks like go and drive to buy the food to the next village, and then come back. And actually, when they gave the trust, the people did it. So a lot to find out about ecosophy and living with our environment and letting nature and the environment and the subjectivity to guide us. So one example here is that I was working with other artists in Geneva, and I went to a place because there was these disappearances in Mexico, Ayotzinapa. I don't know if you heard, 43 students disappeared forever. And so I am engaging in this action of going to the Square of Nations, United Nations, to complain as an artist. And there I met people, by participating in the politics of the situation, I met people that put me in contact with the Zapatistas that was in that manifestation. And then I sent to the first encounter of artists that participated in the Zapatista communities, Comparte, in 2015, I think. I didn't went, but my painting appeared in their encounter. And this is a painting I did where I feel it's like it's me here in Europe with my 3 children, but we can also be these beings that are with trees and are with nature and have roots wherever we are. And I use this phrase also from Salvador Allende, says the history is ours and is made by the people. This is one of these last words he said, and I don't know if you know, but yesterday there was 1,200,000 people in the streets in Chile, and it was the first time that we have Las Grandes Alamedas, they open the way he said they will. So Mother Earth is working in ways that we need to open up to that and be receptive. And so this is how I ended up going to the Encounter of Women in Chiapas, where we were asked to do an agreement with Mother Earth. That was the conclusion of the encounter. But, Thank you. Thank you. You're listening. Thank you for listening. Bravo. We are all here. So this is how we started the encounter. I'm too close to the microphone, thank you. First, we were like 8,000 women in San Cristobal de las Casas, and every single organization we met before going to the Caracol to talk about our problems. In a way, I went there like asking for help because I am a migrant, I haven't been recognized in many levels, I'm still struggling, so how can you help me? And so first we met before going into the encounter, and there were several meetings, and it was amazingly democratic and beautiful. Then we arrived. The photo jumps quickly, but immediately we are receiving food, and it's for free. We are or for very little money, coffee, places where to sleep. We are not charged. We only need to inscribe ourselves. And we can propose pedagogical activities. The cooking was all collective by the Zapatistas. The next day we are received with music at 6 a.m. We wake up with songs of Zapatista women playing. I can play at the end, but we don't have time. But we wake up by them singing us to wake up. And then there was a series of speeches in which each caracol brought their conclusions of what they have been doing for the last year regarding education, health, and food. I mean, how they have advanced to give security to their own communities. And we have to be there. I mean, I was amazed about the discipline. I mean, this woman, we were standing under the sun for a whole day, and they stand up. They never moved. They were really resisting under the sun. This was a ritual that was done by many communities coming from Guatemala, Honduras, North America, and we were praying and asking for help for the women that have died now in Latin America. Berta Cáceres is one example, but all the women that are dying today in Latin America protecting Mother Earth. So we were doing this in the morning. We saw a lot of discipline. The Zapatistas also did theater plays where they were explaining why for them is no option of working for multinationals and giving examples of how they still can live in a different way and have their own occupations, hueseras, people that help women to give birth, santeras, and forgotten. This was all then after they kind of welcomed us, this was, for example, all the workshops we could do in one day. So because they accepted anyone who wanted to give a workshop to propose it. And so we have hundreds of workshops to attend from women from all Latin America. So there were women from Argentina giving workshops of how to use the internet in a clever way. I can give you the links after to protect ourselves. There was women doing publications of their own histories and their own testimonies of resistance. Women just telling stories from their villages. And we were free to circulate around all of these workshops. The Zapatistas were filming as well. They were making an archive of all the information we brought them. They were very sophisticated in that sense. They were taking notes. Everybody was taking notes. We were all learning from each other. And this is, for example, the landless women from Brazil, presenting their strategies to survive from cancer or whatever diseases due to dirty water, etc. But what was interesting is that we all took notes from each other. These are the Zapatistas de la Realidad giving us their organic food and local food, which was amazing. This is, I asked to do art representation in Geneva. For me, I'm an artist, I'm 48-year-old and I haven't found a commercial gallery yet. But in the Zapatista community, in 15 minutes I was granted the right to sell my art and be part of the art market. And this is an engraving I brought from my father who made it in Bulgaria. So I was sharing again to the Zapatistas this experience of persecution and repression and resistance, and there it had an echo, and I could sell it to the other women. All the women were buying my engravings done by my father who died, and it created and then I could buy art from the other women that were done then. Now I will do very quickly. This is the dreams I had after the encounter when I came back to Geneva. And so in this dream is again the action for women. You can see me, I am in that abyss and suffering because self-pity probably, but you can see that the women from Latin America, they are not in self-pity, and their art is about testimonies of memorialization of what is happening today with the dead people, the resistance that are being killed. So we don't need the museums, the white cubes or anything, we just need among us to be fearless and record what is happening. That's one dream. The other is, this is kind of funny, but this is when we are living in capitalism and in these imperial cities, we complain about really minor stuff, like we don't get our free shipping or our little 20% discount in something, and we feel depressed. And this is this infantilization in which we are living here that keeps us completely trapped. This is a dream of me traversing the tunnel of post-traumatic stress disorder, in which I felt that in this encounter of the Zapatista woman, I felt that I wasn't alone. I mean, we are many thousands of women. We are going through this, and I'm not weird. I'm not different, and somehow also in the dream, that piece of body that you see there, badly drawn, but that I like there, is the body. I mean, it's finally our bodies that, if they are healthy, if they are strong, we can keep the open up of this tunnel open and get out through the other end. We women need to stay healthy. This is a dream of how the discipline is important. This body of discipline, there is Che Guevara, there is Fidel Castro, but it's also this sort of stop the infantilization of I want this, you want that, but just became a unified body of discipline. I felt the Zapatistas really had it. And the last one that I found interesting, but is the ethics and politics that they share, and we need to share. This, I don't know how to explain this dream, but it was like a huge present I was receiving. This is another one. I came back to Europe, and again I felt completely hopeless. But then this is some people in San Cristobal who have our residency there, and they still telling me you can get up and you can walk through. So it's again this idea that we can, and this is about the woman, the revolutionary law of women. This is the last one. This is that I have to move to a new land with my children and start from nothing. And that there's not going to be a miracle. There is not going to be a fantasy that's going to save me. It's going to really come from the same courage that these indigenous women have. And then I want to finish with the revolutionary law of women, of the Zapatistas. I mean, they started, and that really needs to be more research, and I didn't speak enough, but about the basic security, right to how many children you want to have, at what age do you want to have them, do you have the right to work? I have the 10 laws here, I can send them to you after. Also, they don't allow alcohol and drugs because that has brought too much violence into their communities. And this is part of this. If you have young children that don't have enough food or they don't have a good place to sleep, how can the rest of the community sort of spend energy in things that are useless? They have this consciousness, and this is why we women are so important today, because we will put ourselves not in the place of control and domination of things that are too complex, but of this micro scale of love and justice, finally, and without miracles, really. Thank you. Anyway, just bravo for listening, and if you want, I can send you more about the laws of the revolutionary woman, because historically, they were the first ones, if we want to talk about Zapatism, who established laws. The laws were not made by the man. And so if this movement has lasted for so many years, it's because the bases were done.